Hi, my name is Kanak, and today we're going to be learning about quadratic equations. Some of the things that we're going to be covering in this video are what are quadratic equations, how do you solve them, the methods to solve them, what are roots, the application and the types of questions that are frequently asked, and sketching a quadratic equation on a graph. So, what are quadratic equation? Quadratic equation is basically an equation where the highest degree of the variable is 2. It is generally of the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0, where a cannot be equal to 0. So the term we use while solving quadratic equations is root. Roots are basically the values of the variable for which the equation holds true. The methods to solve quadratic equations are the factorization method and the quadratic formula method. The first one is the factorization method. This is uh, a method where we factorize the equation. So we find values that are factors of b that add up to b and are factors of c. So here is an example that x square minus 6x plus 5 is equals to 0, where a is equal to 1, b is minus 6, c is 5. So we find values that add up to b and which also multiply to c. Here we find that minus 1 and minus 5 are the factors. So the next step would be to break down the equation, factorize it, take the common factors out, and we will basically find an equation that is x minus a and x minus b, where x is equals to a and x is equals to b. We can check our answers by putting it into the equation, and if the answer is equals to 0, then the value is right. The second method is the quadratic formula method, uh, which goes like x is equals to minus b plus minus under root b square minus 4ac upon 2a. Here the part that is under root b square minus 4ac is called the determinant or the discriminant. It basically tells us if the equation has any roots or what types of roots it has. Roots can be of three types, that is real and unequal, real and equal, and no real roots. So if the discriminant is greater than 0, then the equation has real and equal roots. These can be rational or irrational. If the discriminant is equal to 0, then the equation has real and equal roots. These can also be rational or irrational. But if the discriminant is less than 0, then the equation does not have any real roots. So we basically plug in the values of a, b, and c into the equation. The discriminant does not add another step to the process because you're going to be using it into the equation anyways. It just helps in finding out if the equation has any roots or not. So the types of questions that are asked, quadratic equations are mainly asked in the problems of area and the problems of motion. Here is an example of uh, the area of a rectangle, that is uh, a floor whose length is 5 times the width and the area of the floor is 45 meters square. So we take a variable that is equal to the width of the hall. So the length becomes 5 times that value. And when we multiply it, we get 5 w square is equals to 25. That is the area of the rectangle. Here, the equation, in the equation, b is equals to 0. So we have two use two values here. We cannot use the negative value as the length cannot be negative. The second example is where we use the Pythagoras theorem. So we have the measurements of the three sides of the rectangle, and when we put those into the Pythagoras theorem, we get an equation, a quadratic equation. So after solving the equation, we get x is equals to -4 and x is equals to 3. Again, we only use the positive value as length cannot be negative. And we use that value to find the area of the triangle. Another problem of motion. Uh, Here, a ball is being thrown from a height of 80 meters. It reaches the maximum vertical height and then falls back to the ground. The height of the ball when it hits the ground is h and is given by the equation minus 16t square plus 64t plus 80. So the first thing we need to find is the height reached by the ball after 1 second. Here we just plug in t is equals to 1 and we will find the height when reached by the ball after 1 second. The second thing that we need to find is the maximum height reached by the ball. Here we need to find the value, the minimum value of t. So when we factorize this equation, we get t minus 2 the whole square. So the minimum value here can be 2. So when we put t is equals to 2 here, we get 144 as the maximum height. The third thing that we need to find is the maximum, the time that it will take before hitting the ground. So the height here is equals to 0. Here we solve the quadratic equation to find the value of t. Again, we find two values. We choose the positive one as time cannot be negative. Sketching the quadratic equation on a graph. So the vertex form of the parabola of a quadratic equation is f of x is equals to x minus h square plus or minus k. Here h is the horizontal translation. H tells us a point on the x-axis, along the x-axis, because it is inside the parenthesis that gets squared. Subtracting a positive number moves the vertex to the right, so the positive side of the axis, and subtracting a negative number, which is same as adding a positive number, moves the vertex to the left, which is the negative side. The B tells us the vertical shift because it is outside the square part. Adding a positive number shifts the vertex upwards, so the positive side, and adding a negative number pushes it downwards to the negative side. The example here is given f of x is equals to x minus 2 square plus 1. So we are subtracting 2 inside the parenthesis. So when we're subtracting 2, which is a positive number, we move it to the right, that is to the positive side, so plus 2. And we add 1 outside of the parenthesis, so we plot 1 on the y-axis, and this is how we get a parabola with a vertex 2, 1. So the basic analogy behind it is that when a is greater than 0, parabola opens up. When a is less than 0, parabola opens down. The bigger the value of a, the thinner is the parabola, and the smaller the value of a, the wider is the parabola. I hope you learned something of quadratic in this video. Thank you.